Pension money is very important for some people. Without it, they would be stranded. They worked for years and years, putting their trust into a fund that would one day pay out, just as it had to people before them. But as the economy worsened, it became more difficult to keep up with the performance needed to maintain consistent payouts to the people. So what is the only option? Well, you came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Today, we are going to look at the issue of pension cuts. I also want to talk about rising costs and how this actually affects people in their daily lives. So we're going to start with that. You are looking here at an article out of Reuters talking about how oil is reaching multi-year highs at this time. OPEC sees oil's rally towards $80 a barrel as a short-term spike driven by geopolitics rather than any supply shortage. It goes on to talk about the details, but what I want to note here is simply, when you look at the chart, Brent just peaked over 80, WTI is not quite as high. And this here ultimately means people are paying more at the pump, as well as shipping costs are going to be higher. This is presenting the average individual with a problem. Their daily living expenses are increasing. Gasoline and those things interconnected with all of that, shipping costs, as I said, and other things, are just rising and rising and rising. Healthcare spending is another one that has risen dramatically, and you can see that it has grown much faster than the rest of the economy in recent decades. Take a look at this and compare that to, the GDP, for example, here, or dismal wages that you can see here. Over this time frame, we can see what's going to happen. That as time goes on, we will be spending more on healthcare. There's no doubt about that. You can compare the different countries. U.S. health spending is much greater for all categories of care, particularly for ambulatory care and administration cost. I thought Canada was high, but apparently nothing compares to the United States. It is extreme to see. Now, the difference here that I've noted in Canada, if you want an MRI, get in line. It's going to take you a very long time. There are a lot of Canadians who actually go south of the border, just pay money and get it done right away. So the so-called free healthcare isn't so good after all. Now, looking at all of the expenditures, okay, that's what we're focusing on today. It's simply that as time goes on, we are paying more for the same services, essentially. Yes, there are new technologies that come out, and I get that, but essentially the same things are coming out today than they were, let's say, 10 years ago, but the prices have risen. Now we want to talk about what people have, what they make, what they earn. Proportion of U.S. tax returns with adjusted gross income of over $100,000 to under. You can see on this map where the wealth is. You could see how it's all concentrated. There are particular cities that have more wealth focused into, such a tight area. And that goes all around the United States, in fact, where you look. Typical cities here, whether it's in California, whether it's in New York, DC, and other places. All I see is these concentrations, and that's generally not good. You want a middle class that is spread out and that everybody is making money. Everybody's buying products. Everybody's opening businesses. Everybody is selling things and buying things and so on. But that's not really happening. We have this growing divide in between the rich and the poor. This chart really shows us that in a very cool way. But now to get to my point of the video, beginning with my favorite, Illinois. 3 years ago today, the Illinois Supreme Court struck down the state's attempt to cut its employees' pension benefits to chip away at a retirement system debt that has swelled to almost $11,000 for every man, woman, and child. Since then, Illinois' credit rating was downgraded to near junk, and its bonds have tumbled. In its largest city, Chicago was stripped of investment grade status by Moody's. I'll cover that all here throughout the years, okay? It's talking about what do we have to do in order to fix the problem. They have two options essentially, and that is to cut pensions or somehow to make more money. I don't see them making any money, so there's only one other option. Well, what they're trying to do is to make it legal to cut it. They need to convince those in charge in the Supreme Court to basically say, come on, let's cut. Illinois' failure to address its pension crisis has resulted in further deterioration of the state and city's financial condition, exorbitantly high borrowing costs, and an inability to address critical needs at the state and local level. Time is not your friend when your liabilities are compounding and your revenues are not. Where is all the money? So much goes in from your paychecks into things like Social Security. And then what happens? Do you think that you're going to see that on the other side? People who are putting in now, let's say you're getting into the workforce today, you're 25 years old. Do you think in 40 years there's going to be any money for you? The funding shortfall across Illinois' 5 retirement systems climbed to $137 billion. $137 billion. They can never pay that back. They can never raise enough money. The pension deficit, more than 4 times larger than its debt to general obligation bondholders, is adding hundreds of millions of dollars to its cost budget every single year. There's no way they'll ever catch up, okay? More details on this really quickly, okay? I'm going to show you places all across the world that are doing this. Illinois had been contending with the issue for decades. In 1994, Illinois passed a law that was supposed to ensure that the state had enough assets to cover 90% of its liabilities by 2045, though it went on to skip annual payments or failed to contribute enough. At the same time, investment returns were hammered by last decade's stock market bust. Okay, we've been in a bull market since March of 2009. Where is the money? Where is the money? It's been poorly managed? Is that what it is? Or has it been stolen? There hasn't been any progress made. In the case of the numbers, have gotten so big that nobody honestly knows really knows what to do. That's not me saying that, okay? That's the executive director of the Illinois Teachers Retirement System, the state's largest pension. It's a case of the numbers have gotten so big that nobody honestly really knows what to do. How crazy is that? How crazy is that? That sounds like something I would say, but I'm reading a quote from somebody who's obviously right in the middle of all of this. They're going to cut your pension, okay? I can't wait to the very last thing I want to show you here today. I'm just going to say it. They're going to cut your pension. They're going to cut your pension. And the naysayers will be, I would say that maybe they should pick up a book once in a while. Maybe flip through a few articles and you'll see they've already done this. If you don't believe me, look back on my previous videos, type in the Money GPS pension, and you'll see a whole list. I cover the pensions more than anybody because I know this is so key. And when it happens and happens and happens again, people are going to say, well, how was I supposed to know? They're going to do it and they've already done it in some areas. This gets into more details. I'm not going to bore you with this, okay? Let me move on really quickly. By the way, this is the report here and basically goes in, don't worry about it. We're going to be able to fix all the problems. Yes, we are mounting debt. Yes, we haven't had the performance that we wanted, but don't worry about it because we're going to fix it all. We just make some really, really, angelic and beautiful rainbows and flowers type predictions. But how we're going to get to that point, nobody has any idea. The bills come due. Illinois' annual pension payment projected to swell in the coming decades. They have an extreme amount of debt. They have an extreme amount of, in terms of what they need to be paying out. And there's no way that they'll ever do it. These governments are all bankrupt. They're all bankrupt. Every single one. Every single one. 2 top federal worker unions and a federal employee retiree group are blasting the current administration's plans to cut pensions for past and present federal workers by $143.5 billion over the next decade. This is happening right now as we speak. Whether it will happen or not, I'm not sure, but it looks like we're going all around the United States and seeing it happening. And then we go to Europe and we're seeing it happening. We go to other places all around the world and they're doing the same thing. They're making promises and then they're cut. And then they cut and they cut. The cuts which would hit retirees as well as current feds would, combined with the pay freeze, also harm future hiring. According to the president of the government, employees here, it's going into other details of what's going to happen here. I don't know if they're going to do this in this case, but look, top Greek judge resigns over pension cut leaks. They said they would never cut pensions in Greece. That's why people got to the streets and were doing what they did. But here we are. The head of Greece's top administrative court quit on Wednesday over leaks to the media of its deliberations on a new round of pension cuts and took aim at the austerity measures attached to Greece's international bailouts. What we are talking about here are cuts planned for 2019. Oh, some of the stuff was unconstitutional, but you know what? Some of it was constitutional. What does that mean? Well, we can't cut by $400. We can only cut by $200. That's the type of thing that we're going to have to see in Greece, and we'll see it other places as well. Okay, more in conjunction with this, Greece as well here. The drama comes against the backdrop of Greece's response to its long-running economic problems, which led to a string of multi-billion-dollar euro bailouts. The Council of State, one of the nation's highest courts, has the ultimate approval on pension cuts. Whether they'll do it or not, we'll see. But the IMF and the Troika, they want to see this, and they will get what they want. The recently leaked cuts were planned for 2019 and could shrink retirement benefits by another 18% on top of previous reductions. Okay, now, I can't remember what those were. I covered it here on the channel, okay? So, 18% already. Maybe let's just say another 10% came off the top of that. 30%. 30%. You were getting $1,000, you're getting $700 now. That's going to hurt, no matter who it is. If you're getting a pension and your pension is cut by 30%, you're all going to hurt across the board. So that's Greece. Moving on. Kentucky. My friends in Kentucky, watch out. Kentucky lawmakers held an illegal secret meeting to discuss pension cuts, judge rules. They are doing this today, and it is not going to be understood until after the actions are taken. A judge has ruled that the Kentucky House of Representatives violated the state's Open Meetings Act with a closed-door conference where lawmakers from both parties huddled to discuss their plans to deal with the state's pension crisis. I've covered the issue in Kentucky before. Illinois is not the only one, and you could see what they're doing. They're meeting in secret to discuss how much they can cut from you. Okay? I gotta move on. Going on too long here. Puerto Rico. There was some uproar took place. Why? Because pension cuts. They're talking about that. Federal board is seeking benefit reductions of 10%. And as I brought up the issue in Greece years ago, oh, you have to put in this austerity. We're going to cut, let's say, 10%. It's 10% today. But it's another 18% down the road. It's another 10% down the road. It's another 30% down the road. And they'll just do it over and over and over again until you have nothing but little crumbs. There'll be nothing left. All right, last one. Spain protests as pension cuts loom. Spain's Social Security fund has diminished from 66 billion at its peak to 8 billion at the end of 2017. Pensioners have staged mass protests against the prospect of lower than inflation increases. There's no way that they're ever going to be able to pay out. Same in Spain, same in Greece, in Italy, Or look at areas like Kentucky and Illinois and California and all over the place, and people don't understand the truth. And that is, you have trusted the wrong people. You have trusted the wrong people. And I just want to note on one more thing. I've been covering the issue going on in Argentina right now. And guess what? Guess who came to the rescue of Argentina? Well, Franklin Templeton, that's right, lending more than $2.25 billion in a discreet cash infusion reminiscent of the bond fund manager's support for Ireland in the wake of the Eurozone crisis. So here they are coming in, giving them nearly $3 billion here, or I should say, snapped up more than 3/4 of the $3 billion in bonds sold by Argentina. So practically all of the bonds sold were bought by Franklin Templeton. A huge, huge company, obviously, and this has been something that we can see, whether it's a particular country or whether it's a company like Home Capital, they need to have the big institutions, whether it's the Warren Buffetts, whether it's the Franklin Templetons, to come in and bail them out. Otherwise, the government has to do it. But there's always these sweetheart deals, insider deals. They sit down in secret and they decide things. They decide whether or not you're going to get your pension. They decide whether or not you're going to get your Social Security. They decide which companies will live and which companies will not. And that's the way it goes. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up. When you give me a thumbs up, it supports this channel. So I do appreciate that very much. Last but not least, if you found the video informative, I know that you will find my books, The Money GPS, and my newer release, Global Economic Collapse, even more informative. You can actually flip through these books. All you have to do is go over to Amazon. There's a link in the description of this video. You just click on that. It'll bring you over there where you can flip through the pages of the books for yourself. Take care.